Welcome to Motorbike Mondays, episode 2. This is Evan, and again I am here with Jared and Brady.
How's it going?
What's up, guys?
Jared, pick your mic up.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So, we're back again with our second show, and if you listened to our first one, you heard our introductions and who we are. A quick recap, I'm Evan from Race Tech Electric.
Brady from Seaweed and Gravel.
And I am Jared, also from Seaweed and Gravel.
So we just kind of went over last time who we are, what we do, why you should listen to us, and hopefully you've listened to that and you're not wondering who we are. So anyways, today our main topic is going to be buying a used bike, what to look for, what models to check out, what your end result is with the bike, and hopefully we can help you figure out what to get or to kind of plan your build and figure out where to look. But first off, we're going to start a segment we're going to do called What's in the Shop and talk about what we're working on currently. So, one of you guys talk about what you're doing.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I can hit this first. Currently, right now, I have two bikes I'm working on. One is a 74 Honda CB550 for a client, and it's kind of like it's similar to the last 550 I released, kind of Cafe Brat style hybrid deal. And then the second is another client bike, a 77 XS750. This one's kind of a straight out cafe.
Did you source both of those bikes, or did customers bring them to you?
Sourced one of them. The 550 we sourced out. We found up in LA area.
So since this is going to relate to what we're talking about, how'd you find that bike?
Craigslist.
That was Craigslist. That was actually Jared. Jared is, in my book, a freaking guru when it comes to Craigslist. It's probably at least every other day he's sending me some kind of photo or link to something on Craigslist that.
That's what I do when I go poo.
Yeah. That's what it's there for.
But yeah, we got this one up in LA area. I don't remember exactly where, and ended up buying. Yeah, we ended up buying two. One with the C's motor.
The triple or the CB?
Oh, the CB750. We found, or Jared found two of them, and one was an F, which is the one I'm currently working on, the Super Sport model, and the other is the K, which has the C's motor, but everything is in great shape. Just
you're gonna both
really
from the
tired.
same guy?
Both from the same guy. It was a guy. He's got like some kind of shop up there.
What'd you pay for him?
It was a package deal. Well, $1,100 for the one that I'm working on now, the Super Sport, and $400 for the other that is
the C's motor.
The C's motor, and I haven't even looked at it. Had some freaking sweet like home built booger weld T-bars on it.
C's motor.
With everything else completely stock with these just lane splitter T-bars.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did the one run?
No, the guy of course said it did ran, or he just had it running, which when we brought it back to the shop, I should have known he was full of shit because the points were ripped out of it.
Yeah, and the tires were flat, the points were ripped out, the freaking wasn't the stator cover off or something like that?
Just the outer cover was. No.
Oh,
that was the other one because they tried to unseize it.
Yeah.
Well, if you kick hard enough, you don't need points.
Yeah.
They're just there for the old guys.
They, and then this will be good. At least there was a lesson in me to really examine a bike before you get excited and buy it. I ended up finding the valve cover was like in the corner of it was just completely a piece of chunk just broken off on it.
Like where a bolt goes.
Yeah, exactly. Someone
didn't have that.
Somebody torqued it down.
Someone was trying to probably break the bolt free with their impact wrench and got a little too heavy on the hand.
happen.
But yeah, those are the two bikes I'm currently working on. One, the 550 is almost done. I should be done hopefully in about a week and a half or two. And then the XS, we're still figuring out a seat design with the client. So yeah, I know Jared got a new project in today.
Yeah.
Put up some pictures of those soon. Oh, I forgot
Yeah.
to mention, we have a new website sorted out. So it's going to be motorbikemondays.com. You can download the show from there. And we'll try and post pictures and stuff about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
some notes from the show. So check that out. Hopefully you'll be getting this from there. So
Shoot.
you'll already see it.
We'll probably mention that. We'll get an email set up so you can
Well,
tell us how we're
I have
doing.
set up contact at motorbikemondays.com.
Oh, there we go.
That's already set up. So
Yeah.
you can email that.
We're
Cool.
good.
Can we
Yeah,
access
any
it from
questions,
email?
any ideas, or just tell us we're idiots. Have fun.
Yeah, no. So last time we spoke with you guys, I was
All five of
finishing
you?
up a- yeah, I was finishing up a Yamaha TX 500. I actually went back after, or the next day, and finished it up. Got it all out of the shop. It's off getting tuned right now, and
We'll definitely put up a video of that running. 'cause
yeah,
the pipes,
the pipes
sound
sound
really
insane.
sweet.
Yeah, they'll get you pulled over real quick.
We'll probably do a photo shoot at the end of this week or maybe next week for it. But today I got the next project in. It's another CB550. I think it's a 77,
That sounds fun.
77, 76. And it's gonna be really similar to the bike that Brady's building. The client basically said, "I want exactly what the last 550 was." But now he's changing his mind, which is good because it gives me a little more creative freedom with it. But it's going to be low, or it's not going to be low, sorry. It's going to be like Cafe Brat style.
Just low and clean, man.
Low and
That's all you
clean.
need.
Just clean and low.
Are you going to paint this one?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to, I'm going to do the frame. The wheels are actually already painted, so that's chill. But I'm going to end up doing the frame. Got to paint the motor. Pipe, and then the tank I'm actually gonna sub out for paint because
Yeah.
it's just gonna end up being cleaner and better in the end. So yeah, that's what I'm about to tear into. Should be a fun month and a half or so. Get into 'em
those
for
are
Christmas.
Awesome
Mhm.
bikes.
Evan, I know you've got some interesting stuff going on in your
I have
shop.
a couple interesting bikes in my shop at the moment. I have a, 78 maybe, BMW R90/6 that was actually a customer of Jared and Brady's, so that's over here getting a full rebuild.
We didn't want to deal with the guy.
It's
No, come on, man. Let's be nice.
I'm just kidding.
what he's like our biggest fan. We're gonna have to edit that out.
I know.
It's rough, but it's a good starting point for a rebuild. The engine runs overall. It's in okay shape. Just needs a full tune-up and lots of little things, but it'll be a fun project. I know that BMW the 70s Airheads pretty well, so they're fun bikes to work on, and actually really easy bikes to work on for something to start with. They can be a little intimidating, but they're a really good bike to learn on. So maybe I'll talk about those a little later. And then I have a
This is the fun one.
I have a 04 Suzuki RMZ 250 that was my dirt bike for a couple of years, and it is I just sold it last week actually, and it's now back in the shop from the buyer.
Didn't want to leave you.
Yeah, apparently.
Didn't want to be away.
After a full rebuild and literally replacing everything on the bike, it was like new mechanically, and it went out the door last week. Sold it and was happy, and I get a call and the engine's seized, and so we've been playing detective, going through that, trying to figure out what happened. So,
Oh, man.
yeah, it's interesting. It's
CSI up
at
in
this
here.
point it looks like a seized big bearing on the connecting rod, and most likely run without oil. So I don't know how that's going to end up, but it's in
Yeah.
pieces at the moment after dissecting the engine. So I don't know. That one's going to be interesting. And
It's
then
going to be more interesting, the phone call
Yeah.
to the guy who
that exactly.
is pretty much trying to swing one over you.
I-
Which it sounds like.
sounds
We're
like.
making no assumptions quite yet, but the only logical explanation to what could possibly have caused this is
He ran it dry.
ran it dry.
There's just no other way.
And then wanted to try to cover his ass and put the old oil that he just pulled out to do an oil change. Probably forgot to put some new oil in, and after he seized the motor, threw the old oil back in after catching his mistake and calling Evan.
I think so. I mean, that's what
But-
everything points to,
Yeah.
and it's just awkward because now I'm in that gray area where like, you know, I don't want to be an asshole and I feel bad because the bike failed after selling it to him, but I also broke it in myself, and I know for a fact the engine was reliable with 3+ hours of break-in time and hard riding on it. And, you know, I don't know. I get the bike back saying that it was run for a total of 5 minutes and the new tires are worn and the air filter looks like it was run on a tank in fucking Iraq for 6 months.
Exactly.
You know, it's just like shit does not add up. And all these phantom like leaks develop the second it
'Cause
leaves
you
the
ran
shop.
it-
Yeah.
You ran it here with the guy.
Well, the
for
guy
10
wrote
minutes,
it
right?
in the shop. I mean, we ran it in the shop, and then he went and rode it around the parking lot. You know, we ran it for at least 15 minutes total here with no problems, and the engine sounded perfect. So I don't see how, like, it developed these leaks, and I also don't see how you fix a leak by changing the oil.
Exactly. That was the
I
the
mean-
reasoning for him to change the oil, was because he saw it leaking.
It
Doesn't add up.
no, none of it adds
Yeah.
up. The story that he's given me, I kind of took at face value when he brought it in, but after going through everything, nothing makes sense from what he said. So
Exactly.
it's weird, you know, because I don't feel like he's a bad guy, but it's I am getting the feeling at this point that he blew
He's
the
a
bike
bad
up
guy.
from his own mistake and is, you know, hoping to get it fixed on my dime. So, anyways, that's not going to happen, but we'll see what happens. I'll update you on that one in a week or so.
Yeah, that'll be next week's episode.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it'll be interesting. I'm kind of dreading this phone call. It's not going to be fun, but
Yeah, I'm not.
I should record that phone call. Actually.
We should do it on the
Yeah.
air.
Yeah.
Oh god, that'd be funny.
Oh man.
And then I have an XS 750 triple, same bike Brady's working on in here.
That's right.
That I bought a while back. It's just in the corner, but I'm hoping to get back to that sometime soon.
Yeah.
It's a decent bike overall, but it's got some weird noises and stuff to work out, so I don't know where that'll end up, but it's going to be a good project. So
I'm hoping to get back to the KZ 750 before I forget what's wrong with it.
I like those bikes. KZs are cool bikes.
I have bad history with KZs.
I've had a couple GPZs, which is pretty much the same engine, and they're
Twin.
awesome. Oh, not the twin. I've had
Oh.
before. The GPZs use the 4-cylinder, but they're a nightmare because of their starter clutch. They use this like secondary chain-driven starter clutch that always fails, and you can get to it from dropping the oil pan to replace the starter clutch, but it's insane. It's like doing a root canal on your teeth, but going in through your ass to do it. It's doable with the engine in the frame and without tearing the cases apart, but it's a nightmare of a job. So I'll never
Oh, man.
do that again.
seems to be a common thing when there's like an engineered flaw.
Yeah.
It is always
It's
the most
right.
difficult way.
So it's a horrible design. It's actually a good idea how it operates. It's better than like the like, I forget what you call them, but the clutch style that, you know, only rotates one way. Like it's usually part of like the clutch basket or something. The starter is like gear driven. That is a nicer way to do it if anything fails, but nothing ever fails on those except the starter. So then they do it this way, and the starter's fine, but it's spring-loaded with these little pins that engage. It's just a nightmare, and they always wear out, and there's, you know, then the starter just spins, and you're left with, like, going in from the bottom of the engine to replace it. It's the worst
man.
job in the world. So, anyways, I like KZs, but that job is miserable. Anyway, so that's what everybody's doing right now. And I was going to do a recap, but you kind of know we didn't talk about anything too interesting last
Yeah.
time, so there's not a whole lot to
Yeah,
talk about
exactly.
there. Go listen to episode 1, see who we are if you didn't already. And, you know, then we'll, from now on when we're talking about like actual topics, we'll do a recap so if you want to go back and listen to the previous episode if you didn't hear it.
So
But
it's actually a pretty good idea.
yeah,
It'll actually
if you
be
didn't-
numbered too. So
Right.
Yeah.
So you can go back and pick what you want to listen to.
I
Chronologically.
say this one will be number 1, and the intro will be 00.
That'll work.
Yeah, it's done.
That's fine.
sweet.
So, anyways, today
I like
we're
double
going to
zero.
talk about buying a used bike. So we're going to kind of look at it in a couple different ways. First, we're going to start with is, so you want to buy a used bike, and we're going to kind of look at it like it's going to be a project bike, really, not like you're going to go buy a used bike. You're going to hop on and commute.
Yeah, not
It's-
necessarily like something you buy, you run around on
Right.
just from the start. More with the idea of this being a project in mind.
So we're going to start with, what type of build do you want to do? So if you're gonna buy a bike, you're trying to figure out, what to look for. The first thing you're gonna start with is figure out exactly what type of a build you want to do. You guys do this a lot more than me, so
We can.
how do you
we can
start?
build up this.
How do you start there from different? What are the types of builds? How do you figure out what you want to get for that type of build?
Let's see. Well, I guess we could start with the most common build that is, though I guess the two most common builds would be like the cafe racer style and the bobber style.
So the cafe is really simple because you just buy a set of Clubman bars.
Yeah, like we talked about.
and,
Yeah.
and a bar and mirror, and you're done.
You're good.
And you get at least $2,000
yeah.
more out of the bike for that.
Exactly.
So that's definitely the way to go.
Well, same thing with bobber. You just put like some ratty just ape hangers on it,
Yeah.
or like T-bars or
Yeah,
something like
exactly.
that.
And
you're good to go.
And put
tape
a
on the-
Springer
you gotta
seat
tape
on
the
the
exhaust.
Springer seat on a
seat
soft tail.
yeah.
you have
Don't
to
do that,
have
please.
to put
Yeah.
exhaust tape on it.
I'm sorry. There are people listening that I'm sure have done that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I just think it's silly.
I don't
but,
agree.
Yeah,
No, I mean if that's what you want to do and that's what you're comfortable with, then by all means.
exactly.
But the only downside is then please don't go mark it up $2,000 when you sell it
Yeah,
because
exactly.
of that. That's where it gets frustrating.
But-
if it's priced accordingly, then
Yeah.
those are like great modifications.
Well, I guess with cafes, kind of the most, I guess your common platforms you would start with is most common. I'd say is definitely the CB range, the Honda CB range. And that's the two mains I would say would be the CB 550
And the 750.
and the 750. Actually, the 750 I don't see too much anymore, just because those bikes are getting harder and harder to
Yeah.
find.
Well,
and
they
the
were
price-
the most popular
they were,
for a while,
exactly.
but they're just gone.
Yeah.
I've got 3 of them. If
yeah,
anybody.
but you,
You're sitting on a gold mine.
But they're all just parts too. So.
yeah.
Well, they were bikes.
Well, even the parts are going for a premium now. Like
Exactly.
they're literally. That's like they made so many of those bikes, and they're next to impossible to find now for a
Mhm.
reasonable price.
Yeah,
You
they're
know?
definitely if that is your bike in mind that you are set on that bike or any bike, it's worth, I'd say, spending the extra time and money seeking after that. But if say it's your first project or
just want a
you just
cafe
want
racer.
something, I'd say don't even look what is the general or at least most common bikes built from it. The first thing, even if I'm looking for a new project, I'll just go on Craigslist, type in what do I usually do? Actually, I just type in my minimum
Prices.
amount, which is usually
The
like
maximum.
minimum. I throw in. Well, now they have it separated. Motorcycles and motorcycle parts,
Right,
which
right.
is
Cool,
genius.
yeah.
Because before I would set my minimum to like $300,
Right, to filter
and
out
to
parts.
filter out all the bullshit.
Well, one thing, this is a really good tip for Craigslist. When you're searching for stuff like that, in the search bar, so, if you're doing a cafe, you're probably looking for a bike that was built in the 70s or
Yeah,
80s,
exactly.
early 80s.
Yeah,
So a
early
trick,
80s.
I always do this, you can search for a year range of bikes. Craigslist doesn't make this obvious, but you can type in, so if you want a bike that was built in the 70s, you can type in like 1970, but you type in 197 and then instead of the 0, put a star, the little asterisk on your number
Oh,
pad.
no way.
So if you
Wow.
do that, it'll search. It uses that as a search term, but the star is a wild card, so
Yeah.
it will not look for any particular year. It
It'll
searches
just
for
bring
the
up
string
anything
197.
This has changed my
Yeah,
life.
you have to
Right?
do that.
That's genius.
So
This
like
is
when I'm
insane.
looking for bikes, like once a day, usually I'll go to Craigslist and
I'm
I'll
gonna
just
try it right now.
I'll just type in 197 star into the search bar and I'll put in my prices that I want, 300 to
Yeah,
$3 grand or
yeah.
whatever, and
Oh,
then
dude,
you
I
do
don't
that
go
and
high.
it'll
I go
give
like
you
1,500
it
max.
gives,
Well,
it
yeah,
gives you
remember-
everything with everything that has 197 in the title. So if the bike was
Yeah.
built, you can also just do
Just
7
yeah,
star if
exactly.
you want, but you'll get more random crap that
Mm.
way. If you put the whole year, you get it
Oh,
filters. a
that
little bit.
is.
It's
that
a
is
really
awesome.
good trick. I don't remember how I figured that out, but it totally works because you don't have to sort through a lot of crap.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
Well, remember when you could buy a bike for $1 cc?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
nice.
That was
Yeah.
chill.
really nice.
those days are long gone.
Yeah.
Dang,
but,
dude, this is so cool.
Yeah, that's the number one. That's like the number one thing on Craigslist. You got to do that. If you're-
DT250
man.
for $600.
Yeah. So where were we? Yeah. So I recommend just not unless you like I said dead set on I want this bike to do this. Just look what's out there and
Be open to, be open to different models. And
I think you should, but the only downside to that is if you're a guy that's relatively new to this, a really helpful thing is forum support, like being able to find a website with tons of information.
Yeah, that's
And
just
if
don't
you-
buy a TX500.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. If you find something really cool, but it was not very popular, you're going to have a hard time finding parts, and you're also going to have a hard time finding information, tech support, basically.
Yeah.
Guys that have already done your particular job and how to fix stuff, which if you're not real comfortable, you're already familiar with the systems, you're not comfortable with troubleshooting this stuff, you can kind of get in over your head quickly.
Mhm.
So for
Yeah, that's a good point.
a first bike like a CB or something, because there's 5 or 6 major Honda CB
Mhm.
forums with every single question you could come up with has
Exactly.
already been asked 10 times.
and every model has its own
Yeah,
dedicated
exactly.
website forum.
Well, not to mention parts too.
Parts,
you know?
exactly.
If-
Yeah, and in the CB range, they recycled a lot of
definitely.
parts that the one part could be on every single model
Right.
of the CB range.
But what you got to be careful about, especially in the CBs, is like the oddball ones, like the 350 and the 360,
Yeah.
the little twins.
Dude,
They're
the
awesome, but they're
360s,
just.
I freaking love those
I
bikes.
had one, awesome
Oh,
bike,
and you get
awesome
that
bike.
6th gear.
Yeah,
you can hit a buck
they're
10, no problem in
amazing
that thing.
bikes. Amazing.
Yeah,
They're kind of rare, but there's good support for those though.
Mhm.
I mean, they're more rare than the 4-cylinder CBs by far, but there's enough information on them that you're not
Yeah,
going to get
exactly.
stranded trying to figure stuff out. So
Yeah.
that's a cool one to look for
Mhm.
sure. They're not fast, but they're a good little cruiser.
yeah, but yeah, and it's also I don't know. I mean, if it is your first bike kind of thing, I suggest not putting a whole lot of money into it, especially getting into it.
Yeah.
I always kind of looked at it with your first bike, say first project. I've always looked at it as like, think of it like your first girlfriend, or however, junior high, high school, whatever. It's kind of one of those things. Like if it's one of those things where you try a lot of different things. And you mess up, and then you realize what you shouldn't do in the future.
Yeah.
And chances are it's not going to work.
But your first BJ would be like getting the bike running.
Exactly.
So it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. And so it kind of also like it prepares you if there is some catastrophic failure that you aren't just completely.
Well, if you're not in upside down on
Yeah,
the value, that's always a
exactly.
plus.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, if you do your homework and you look around, you should always be able to stay positive on the value of a
Yeah,
bike.
yeah,
and that's pretty
definitely.
important, unless you know exactly what you want and it's going to be a
Mhm.
keeper. Otherwise you're going to put a lot of thought into it if you know every dime you sink in is putting you,
More and more.
yeah, like you're going to be going upside
Yeah,
down on it. It's hard to sink
exactly.
money into something.
Yeah. So that's I guess spent quite a bit of time on cafes there, but
Well, and a quick note on the CB is like most of the 70s bikes were the single overhead cam models.
Mm.
for the 4 cylinders, anyways. Like the 750 up to 78, I think.
78 was a single.
79
overhead, and
went to the
79 was
dual.
first dual. I love the dual.
I
overheads.
prefer the dual engine by far.
They aren't definitely aren't as common to. I mean, they're out there. There's a lot of dual overheads, but
they're
as
not
far as
built
build
for
platforms,
right.
they are not very common. But
I've seen some amazing ones.
yeah, that was actually a dual overhead 750. 81 was my very first bike.
It's a great bike.
Loved that thing and blew up 2 motors because of my own damn fault.
They're great. The later ones, the customs, the 750 and the 900 customs were cool because they had a dual range transmission. They had a high and a low.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
10
no.
gears.
Yeah,
right?
it was awesome. It was a 5
Shit, I
speed
didn't
with a
know
high and a
that.
low range.
That's awesome.
It was really cool. It made it a awesome like highway
Yeah.
cruising bike.
They made a 1000 or 1100.
They made an
CB
1100, yeah,
Those
yeah.
are.
There's
not
only a
very-
couple of years of
Yeah,
that, I
they didn't
think.
make those for long, and
But for this type of stuff, you're probably looking
Yeah.
at 70s, 70 to 78 roughly CBs.
yeah, and I'd say like as far as like CC size, it depends on I guess your height and kind of what you're gonna be. If you're toting around town or something, you don't need anything more than a 450. But if you're looking at
Yeah.
freeway time, I would definitely suggest if you want to do it comfortably, I'd say like a 550 should be no problem for you.
Yeah, definitely. The 750 is even not bad. They're really not that powerful,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They're
We're
fine.
still talking.
you can get them up there. But
Yeah,
if you're going to be doing a lot of freeway, the 750 is a nice choice.
yeah, definitely.
I'd say that between the 550 and the 750, it just depends on getting a good deal.
Mhm.
Like one is not, the 750 is not so much better than the 550 that it's
Yeah, I
worth
agree.
paying a premium for.
Yeah,
Really.
I prefer the 550 over the 750. I just think it's a great balanced bike where you still have. It's not a 350 in power wise,
The 550,
and it's not a 750 size wise where you can still throw it around. And on the 550,
It
one
can
of the
run around town, but it can hang with the big boys.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And there's just more. There's less systems on the bike that you have to kind of. Well, not really less. I mean, it's the difference between a dry sump and a wet sump
Right.
motor. Meaning, on the dry sump, there's an external oil bag or oil tank,
Right.
like on the 750.
That was my first bike. Was a CB 550, 1976. It was like
They're awesome.
Yeah, it was a great
They're
bike.
great. And then the what's the word? Accessor? Does that sound right?
successor.
That one too.
Yeah, the successor.
Successor
Was the
CB 650,
Oh,
which is
yeah, right.
another awesome bike.
Those are cool.
It's pretty much the same motor. It is I think slightly bored and stroked than the 550. But
What years were those?
those were I think 80 to 83.
Oh, okay. So yeah, those were the dual cams. So that was right
No,
before
it was still a single cam.
in the 80s.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was
I don't know that particular bike. Then.
the
But you're not
750s.
talking about the Nighthawk models, right?
No,
Okay.
no. Those were after. Yeah,
Okay.
those were the
Freaking
successor to the 650.
Right,
in 84, which is
sounds
pretty
about
much when searching around, you'll find that 84 things start getting really. Not so. I'd say on bikes, that's like the 83 is the maximum cutoff of like you're no longer dealing with like the classic
That's
kind of
probably
look.
true. That's when
They went crazy with electronics and
they tried a lot. Of
yeah,
stuff at that point.
exactly. It was
Digital
like
dashes.
it was the
and-
cocaine days of motorcycles.
That's a good way to put it.
79, I think, was.
That was the first year of the
650.
dual overhead, but I think 80. Yeah,
79.
I think
There was
of the
some overlap.
750.
I think 79 was the first year they made the dual cam
Yeah.
engine, but I think there was some overlap with some sizes, CCs. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean there's a general range for you. I mean,
But they're definitely a good platform. I'll talk about at a later point the charging system specifically because I know those real well,
Mhm.
and there's some good stuff to go over there. But that's not in the scope of what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
But it could be helpful if you're working on one of those for sure.
But,
what about the KZ? I've got a note on here.
KZ. It'd be wise if I don't talk about them.
I
don't have a strong heart for KZs.
You know what? I don't either. The reason that
You were the guy with the boner for one that said put it on the list.
No, I didn't want it on the list. Anyway,
Well, I didn't want
it on the list.
I had a KZ
I think with that, it's
because
worth
I got
talking
it for
about
free.
now. You've gotten like 5 bikes
No,
for free.
that's not true. I've gotten one
At
bike
least
for free.
2.
You have 2.
Yeah.
I got one bike for free.
All right, we'll skip the
What about
KZ.
And it was a
VFR?
KZ 750 Twin, which it was a cool bike, solid motor. The motor looks really rad. I built it. I freaking one day decided I just was going to chop it up and do whatever to it. And the VFR was a Honda.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
it's
but
free
that
bike.
was a
It
free
was a free
bike.
bike.
You're right.
I think in the right price range, they were a good option.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you can
for
get
sure,
it in the right price
definitely.
range and it's solid, go for it.
But that goes for any of the mass-produced 70s Japanese
Yeah,
bikes,
exactly.
really.
It really just depends on what you want.
Oh, and the GS. We've read.
Oh,
GS
God.
as
well.
I've
That's
had
another-
multiple GSs. I forgot about those. The GS 750 in the 70s is one of my favorite bikes in the late 70s.
See,
Amazing bikes. Bulletproof, reliable, great engines, tons of power. They look good, they handle well, and you can get them dirt cheap because they never got as popular as especially the Hondas. So
Yeah.
a GS is a great choice.
Yeah, I'd say there's.
The
definitely-
looks are not quite as good as a Hondas. I think.
but see, another thing too
if
that
you're chopping it up.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
I didn't mean
you're
to cut you off on
customizing.
this.
No.
But, another thing too is when you're looking for a build project or build platform or project, don't focus on what it looks like too much
The cosmetics and stuff,
that's
'cause
true.
you're gonna change it.
everything can be changed. If you want a freaking a Honda tank on a KZ or something, you can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it just takes a little bit of
Creative ingenuity.
of just kind of
Fabrication and
fitting stuff and then making it
Right.
work as such. But
Well, okay. So, what about bobbers? You have any advice? I personally have never built a bobber, so
I've done a
Any advice
couple.
on on that?
The ones that I've done were built from Harleys.
Sportster.
Sportster.
Yeah.
It was one was an Ironhead, one was the Evo motor.
Now, for maybe this is a stupid question, but explain to me exactly what, as far as I know, a bobber really just refers to chopping up the fender, right?
Yeah,
So
this
what does
is-
that really
I
mean
mean,
for the style of bike?
Yeah, it's for pretty much. I'd say now, like the term bobber and chopper,
Is widely used.
I think is say a dude has say he has like a chopper, and he could easily just as well say, this is a bobber, or the words or the terms I think have been very thrown around loosely now.
Yeah.
Essentially, where it originates, bobber comes from. It was.
Bobbing the fender, right?
Yeah, I mean, what it was is, I think it was post World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So, like in the 40s, late 40s, early 50s, they would have Harleys want to get some performance out of them, and that day they didn't really have too many performance parts available for these bikes or for much anything
Right.
motorcycle related. And so the only way to pick up performance was taking things off. So
Right.
you would they would go right to the track and start taking crap off
Take
that
off
they
your
don't need,
headlight, your
fenders,
Right.
and then so essentially bobber came from bobbing the fenders. They bob it, cut it off, and kind of shorten them, get some weight off of it. And so that's where the term came from. Essentially, it's a stripped down bike.
Which is
and
really
it's not
where
only-
cafe racer came from
Exactly.
as well.
During the same time, guys in America were doing bobbers. The same thing was happening over in the UK, where the bikes that they had readily available were old British bikes, or I guess they were new to them then, but like Nortons, BSAs, Triumphs. There's a bunch of others, but
Right.
there weren't much performance parts out there to to make for speed, they take everything off that's not needed, get low bars on it, clip-ons, or I don't know if they're using Clubmans back then.
In the
But
60s. I
yeah,
think.
essentially, well, Clubmans are Z bars flipped upside down.
Right.
That's where they came from. And so they essentially what they were trying to achieve was getting a lower riding position to shift weight up to the front.
Well, it also helps with
And
aerodynamics. The
and
more you can tuck in, you're going to get
Exactly.
air, moving, flowing a little better.
Yeah, and kind of the reason that they were focused more on handling performance is because they've got all those country back roads, and so that's what they were using it for. And they were modeling them after the old GP,
Right. The race bikes
at the time, and
Well, really what it comes down to is I wouldn't be too picky on picking a particular word to describe your bike looking
Yeah,
for it.
exactly.
It's really more use those as search terms in Google trying to find pictures
Yeah.
of what you want to
Exactly.
do. That'll get you in the realm of the style of bike you want to build. But, mix and match, like take whatever you want from stuff you like and you can really turn anything into anything.
Yeah.
It's more about getting a good starting platform.
Exactly. And at first, especially if it's your first project, I wouldn't focus on at all on what it's going to look like. The main thing would be getting it run into function.
Yeah.
Is your main priority, and looks can come after, and then.
Well, that's really what we're going into next is like what specific, so not model specific, but what kind of things should you look at in any individual bike you're looking at? What are important things to take into account so you have a good starting platform? You want to make sure the bike's been maintained. Obviously, if you can start with a running bike, you're way ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
You
and
obviously don't want to start with the basket case if you're not comfortable trying to put something together
Exactly.
there.
Yeah, it can kind of ease you in, and then.
So if you have something running to start with, you always have a reference point basically, which is good. And if somebody tells you a bike is running, be very careful about hearing it run before assuming that it does.
Exactly.
Because
And it's
those guys were talking
how?
about earlier, people can throw that term around loosely. Just running can mean it ran 6 years ago when I parked
Exactly.
it.
Ran when parked.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
ran when parked
See
is
that a
something
lot
to
on
avoid
Craigslist.
in your Craigslist ads because that means jack shit.
Yeah.
Ran when parked
exactly.
in 1982.
Yeah. And that can also mean running on one cylinder and, the transmission doesn't work.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's, obviously if it's running and you can ride it regardless of its overall condition,
That's pretty good
That's
score.
key,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in your price range you can't get that, but, you need to factor in what all is going to go into getting it running because you got to be careful with that. You can quickly get in over your head if it's more work than you planned on.
I would say if it's a first bike, or even for the most part, if you're going to look at a bike and you're fairly new to it, if you can't turn the motor over, I would walk away.
Yeah, definitely.
Right away.
That's true.
Um,
I would always check if the bike is not running. Always check for spark
Yeah,
because
and
that
a
can
lot
save
of time,
you a lot of troubleshooting of an
Exactly.
ignition system.
and a lot of times people will say like, doesn't run, needs battery.
Bring a battery with
Bring
you.
a battery and
Yeah.
some jumpers.
And some gas is a good idea.
Yeah.
Bring
Starter
fresh
fluid.
gas.
Yeah, don't feel
Um,
like when I go check out bikes, I bring that kind of stuff
Yeah.
with me.
Mhm.
Jumper
And I don't
cables,
care
battery.
like what the dude's like. What are you doing? Like,
Well, if he wants to sell it, he shouldn't mind.
Yeah,
if somebody
exactly.
is not comfortable with you doing those things, that's a red flag.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can bring. It's not a bad idea to bring a new spark plug with you that you can use to check for spark without having to go pull a plug from the bike.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
and that's it. Like if you've never
Or-
done that, you can easily pull one of the spark plug wires and ground it to the cylinder head and turn the bike over, and you should see a spark jump.
Yeah.
on-
What I
on the
usually
plug.
do, if not with the spark plug, is just get some electrical wire, probably like 10 or 12 gauge. snip the end, expose the wires on each side, jam it up in the spark plug cap,
And it'll carry that.
and then
That'll
just
work.
put that
Same
next to
kinda
the
thing.
ground. If you don't have a spark plug, but a spark plug definitely is
You can put like a
is
little
a better option.
a piece of metal rod in there. It'll do the same thing.
Yeah, but you're more likely to shock the crap out of
Yeah,
yourself.
but it happens to everybody. So
Yeah.
Well, but that's also a good way to check for spark.
Exactly.
You know,
if you get zapped, it's working.
it's not going to
Yeah,
kill
there's
you.
no line there, and it's
So-
you're gonna feel it. You don't have to see it.
That can save you a lot of trouble because if you're new to this, you may not know how to adjust points and check a
Mhm.
condenser. And on these old bikes we're talking about, a lot of them have points. They don't have electronic ignition yet. So
Yeah.
and that can save you a hell of a lot of trouble.
Another thing, this is primarily the one that I look for, just because I go through absolutely everything anyways on my builds, and so spark and if it's running kind of thing isn't a priority. The main concern I have when it comes to the motors is compression.
Yeah.
What I'll do is, which I always forget every time, is just to bring a compression tester, which you can find them pretty much anywhere. For
Harbor Freight.
we
Harbor
just got,
Freight
we
has-
just
yeah.
got the Harbor Freight one for like $15.
Yeah,
right?
it was like $15.
It's
Yeah.
always good.
But say you don't have that, or you don't feel like you want to. If you don't have it, usually, if you pull the spark plug, and if you don't have one, what I usually do is put my thumb on covering and sealing the spark plug hole, and kicking it over. If it can push your thumb off of the spark plug hole, you've got
decent compression.
chances are it'll run on that. Ideally, like a motor will run on 100 psi. You definitely want it higher than that, but it
Right.
will run on 100 psi, and that's roughly. I mean, if it blows your thumb back, your chances are you're pretty good.
Right.
One of
And
go ahead.
I think that was it.
One of the things that I check for when I go and I'm looking at a bike that is supposedly running or runs good is like when I get there, I'll go up and I'll touch the motor
Yeah,
to see if it's hot.
Right.
Because if it's hot, that's a couple things. One, it could have a problem starting, or it doesn't like to start, or you have to do some magical trick to get
Right.
it running.
Yeah, and a motor will start up much easier and faster on the
When
warm
it's warm.
motor.
Yeah. And so that could be a red flag right there. And I always ask if it's warm, like, so why is the engine warm? Just see what he says. Just see what the guy says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of excuse? And then if it is, I'll say, hey, bike looks cool, but I want to come back and start it when it's cold because I want
Right.
to see what's happening in startup, what
Right.
it's sounding like, the symptoms and stuff. If it's cold, then we ask to start it up and see if there's problems. And most of the time, it's just like Murphy's Law. When you try and start something for somebody, it doesn't work.
Yeah. That happens.
That's happened to me a couple times.
I always check the air filter because I think if the air filter's in good shape, chances are it was maintained with oil changes and everything else. If the oil filter is missing or filthy, there's a good chance that they didn't keep up on regular maintenance. So that's just a quick thing you can look at, and it gives you an idea of what was going on. Also, pull the boots on the spark plugs and see how old they are. If they're rusty or look nasty, and the bike was supposedly maintained, I mean that's a pretty common and simple thing to do.
I mean, when someone says I got the bike tuned up, that's one of the things included.
That's like the first
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So
The bike's running, I just got the bike running. Well, that's a really
Right.
easy thing. That's
Right.
a really easy thing to help get the bike running.
yeah.
Always, ask for maintenance history. They may know it, they may not. If they have any receipts, that's cool. But if they do have receipts, don't always rely on that. It may not be
Yeah,
for that bike, or
exactly.
check the date on them because they could be 10 years old. You might get a stack of receipts and it looks awesome,
Yeah.
but that may not even be
got all
for
these
the bike.
receipts, man.
Yeah, that's always a selling point in Craigslist ads, and
Yeah.
half the time it's bullshit.
But I know we're kind of going at this at a kind of skeptic view. But I mean, a lot of the times, people you're buying on Craigslist or even just see a for sale sign, they're not everyone's trying to get you.
No, but there is a reason we're
but
going
there-
at it
yeah.
skeptically
Yeah, because it's
because we've
happened to
all
all
been
of us.
burned
Yeah.
multiple times.
Exactly. I'm just not trying
So-
to like.
No, we don't want to scare anybody
Yeah.
away, but we also
It's
want
not
to save
as-
people
exactly.
the trouble of getting in a bad situation because it's always frustrating.
Yeah, it's just planning. Plan ahead, and like anything, it just eliminates a majority of the the ill effects
Another
that
thing
a decision can make.
Another thing that I personally like to look for that makes things a hell of a lot easier is if the bike has a title.
Oh,
Especially
that
now.
is a good one.
Yes.
Because, like, you know, a couple of years ago,
In California,
it used
Yeah.
to be very easy to register a bike
Right,
without a
right,
title.
right.
All you had to
Exactly.
do is go down to the DMV, fill out the paperwork,
You just need
Bring
a,
the bill of
a
sale.
written bill of sale. It
Right.
could be
And-
written in crayon with the dude's.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then they just put it
Say,
in the
okay,
system and say,
here we
okay,
go.
they take your word for it.
Now,
Now-
technically you can still do it just as easy if you know the form. There is a a replacement. I forget what it's called. Replacement of lost title or something. I'll look it up and post it. There's the
Yeah,
form.
I'd like to look at that
and
too.
they're always skeptical if you don't, you go in and say, hey, I don't have a title, I need to do this. But if you have the form and you've already filled it out yourself and made up whatever information you needed to make
Yeah.
sure it's complete, if you walk in with that, you probably won't get a second glance.
Yeah.
But if you go in and tell them, hey, I bought something without a title, then you're gonna have a nightmare.
Well, and a big tip for that is AAA is awesome.
AAA is
totally worth
awesome.
it.
Stuff.
Totally
Yeah,
worth it.
it's like $40 a year.
Yeah, and you get
And-
full
And they have
DMV
full
service.
DMV services.
Yeah.
That is worth
yeah.
Especially if you make friends with the girl there and you bring her Starbucks, she'll freaking
Oh, good
register
call.
your
Exactly.
bikes. No
Well,
problem.
at least you get a girl. I always get some fat dude that is like having a bad day. I could bring him
Dude,
a
I've
box
got a
of
story
cookies.
about
He wouldn't
that.
give a shit.
I've got a story about the Honda 750 with getting it
Oh,
registered
that's
this last
right.
time.
I don't know if we have time.
Yeah,
for
no,
that.
we're not
That's
going
a
into
huge
that.
ordeal.
Well, check for a title. Check the VIN
Also-
number versus the number stamped on the bike and the engine is always good.
Yeah, another
If
thing
you-
since we're on it is registration.
Yeah.
That is another one in California, at least. I'm sure it may be like this in some other states, but most states, I'm sure, don't have to deal with this. Registration, it's the horrid back registration of California.
Yeah.
If a bike has sat
7
off-
years.
within I think 7 years, like it goes. If it hasn't been registered in 7 years, it goes off the record or off the books, which is awesome. I prefer that over back registration.
But don't take somebody's word for it.
yeah,
that
Right.
it's been
exactly.
unregistered
Well, that's
that
what I
long.
do. Like, if I'm going to look at the bike, I'll ask the guy for the VIN number, and I'll call
Yeah.
AAA or the
Yeah.
DMV, and I'll run that.
Yeah.
And if it comes up, like, they'll tell you what the fees are. They'll tell you all
You
that
can
stuff.
do that on
You
their
can use that as
website,
a
too.
bargaining tool, too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and say, I mean, with back registration, if it hasn't been registered in 4 years, you have to pay for that registration every one of those 4 years.
Yeah.
Including the one that you want to register.
Exactly. And a lot of the time, say you're looking at a bike that it's got a good price and it's like junked up or whatever. It doesn't have to be junked up, but it's got a good price. And that back registration could just total the bike right there.
Yeah,
it
for
could
sure.
be the back registrations could be up in the $600, $700
Yeah.
range when the bike is not even worth that in parts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is definitely I'd say in the high list of things to look out and make sure you check for.
Well, I bought a bike
In
before
California or wherever
without
that applies.
registration paperwork, but it had a current sticker on it, and then it turned out the sticker was stolen.
Oh, of course.
So it's always make sure that's actually
Yeah.
legit because
What was that website? There's a website. Damn it. I should have planned ahead. I forgot what it was. It was
It's like
there's a
Vintage
website.
Cycle Check or something like that.
Yeah, there's a website where you can type in the VIN. I think it's like $5 or something like that, and it pulls up the history of that that's
that's
connected
cool.
to that VIN.
well, just go to the DMV website and go to the link to renew your registration online. Type in the VIN number like you have it on the title, and it will give you the fees. I mean, you can easily do it on the California DMV website.
Okay,
Yeah, it works
I
just
might have
fine.
been trying to do something else. 'Cause I tried pulling that up at one point.
It
and I
won't give you
needed,
any
like,
history though.
Yeah,
It just tells you what's
Okay.
currently due.
yeah,
But it's a free way to check it.
exactly. Oh, and make sure that just for all sakes, like you have the name of who the bike was last registered to.
Yeah.
Because that is quite a chore
You'll
to find
you'll
that
buy
name.
bikes. I've bought plenty of bikes where the the guy bought the bike from somebody else and never transferred the title to his name.
I've done that too.
Which is not the end of the world as long as all the paperwork checks out. But if the release of liability was already sent in somebody else's name, it can cause problems. I mean, that's not, you don't necessarily need to walk away from a bike because of that, but make sure that he has a good explanation, and it's helpful if he has contact info for the person that he bought it from too.
Well, I mean, for just to cover all bases, like check regulations and register kind of policy in your area or state, and
but that's totally true, because you can get that can kill you on a bike. Right there.
And that's something that you just see a good deal and get excited and just buy it and then realize crap.
Well, it gets really easy to justify stuff to stuff to yourself really quick, like, oh well, it's not that big of a deal, he doesn't have the paperwork, but it's a cool bike, so I'll deal with it later, it'll be fine. That's when
there's tricks and stuff around all this stuff too.
Sure.
It's hard.
It's just all in the name
and
of
it's
saving
super
yourself the most hassle up front.
Going to CHP is so nerve-wracking. It's like, am I gonna walk out of here with this bike?
Right.
Or are they gonna send me home without it?
Yeah. So definitely do your homework on that. So we're already at like 50 minutes. Let's talk about
what do you say about making this
resources.
an hour podcast now?
Yeah, I guess it is. So resources, like obviously Craigslist, we talked a lot about that, gave you some tips for it. I mean, that's the number one place to check now because it's so popular. It's always easy to find stuff, and also look at, if you check Craigslist and there's not something in your local section, then go out and check the Craigslist for the nearest cities, because if you don't mind driving an hour or two, that opens up hundreds and hundreds more bikes.
I just bought a bike in Folsom, California for like $3,000 less than anything I found down here in San Diego, and it was.
Did you drive up there?
Yeah, I drove in my truck.
What's the mileage from here to
Folsom?
It's like 400 miles.
600? I don't know. That's a pretty good drive.
It was like 8 hours.
Yeah.
It's like it's the distance to San Francisco, but a little east.
Yeah.
And I was going to San Francisco with my sister anyway, so I drove up there, threw it in the back of my truck, and
you got a good deal on that bike.
2004 Harley Sportster Roadster, which I've been looking for a long time, had 3,900 miles on it. Got it for $3,900. Like, and all the Roadsters down here were not the color I wanted, and they were all like.
It's so funny because it sounds like it has to be that color because you have no other option.
I know. It's not like I can't
change the color.
Right.
I just wanted that. I don't know. But I mean,
we're going off, but I mean, once you start changing one thing, it's hard to stop too, especially if you're one of us. But
there used to be a lot of cool websites that used Craigslist, like to let you search multiple Craigslist
there is
cities.
Olive Craig's. OliveCraigs.com.
They all got shut down. There's one called Crazed List. I used to use that all the time. That got shut down. Like Craigslist, there's new ones that pop up all the time, and they usually last for like 6 months to a year, and then Craigslist shuts them down because you're not supposed to be able to search multiple cities. At the same time.
I always use my app, the Craigslist app.
Too.
That one it enables you to use. You can search multiple different.
What's the app called?
Craig's Pro.
I just know
Craig's
the app.
Pro. I have that on my phone.
Or I just use Craigslist Pro.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It has a little C Pro Craigslist. Is what
it is.
That's
what I use.
It's got a little peace sign.
Maybe.
Yeah. I have that one.
You have the same one that I do.
That one right there.
Yeah.
So that's probably your best resource, but eBay is a good place to check. It gives you.
eBay's really good for parts.
It's awesome for parts.
Extremely good for parts.
But now that Craigslist has started a separate motorcycle parts section, that helps a lot.
Yes.
I see more listings now because it's easier to get them. People used to flag ads for parts sometimes in the motorcycle section, and now they're separate, so it's not an issue.
Oh, this is way off, but you remember, did you ever see cycling through Craigslist that one guy who had the Kawasaki H1? He had it there for like
for $13,000, and he had a entire page of how, hey, my name's Bill, and all I do is build these things.
Right?
It was red.
Yeah.
We met that
guy.
He
sounded like an asshole.
No. It was the guy with the that CB750. He wanted us.
That was him.
That was him.
No.
Wait, so what was he like? Because that ad has been up for years.
Butthead.
Yeah, could figure
He's
by
gonna
the
listen to
ad.
this, by the way, too.
Yeah. I don't
Okay, good.
Stop.
Hey,
Stop.
douchebag.
Shop.
Take your fucking ad down. It's been
Yeah.
up for 3 years and
No,
nobody has bought the bike.
Yeah, he sold one and had another that he's doing the same thing.
Oh God.
He ended up. I guess he sold one of them
Can't believe you
for.
met that guy.
Yeah, he
I know
lives.
exactly
he
who
lives
you're
right
down
talking
from
about.
our shop. Yeah.
Oh really?
He sold the first one for like I think $7,000. Some guy in Germany or something.
His
like
ad
that.
was literally 13 grand.
Yeah,
for that
13 grand, and listed off absolutely
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
And yeah, the H1s are freaking. It's a
two-stroke triple, right?
Two-stroke triple. Freaking genius bikes, but not 13 grand.
I just remembered his name.
What was it?
It was Ross.
Ross. Yeah.
Ross.
I'd like
So-
to meet him after reading that ad so many times.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
funny.
So I met that guy. We met him, and he
Interesting.
lives up to his post.
Yeah, I believe it.
But
That's funny.
yeah.
Yeah, I've come across that many times and yelled at my computer when I read it.
Yeah. There was actually other ads posted
Like
in
Reese.
reference to that guy's ad
Oh, nice.
saying, please take this
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
You're ridiculous.
That's funny. I can't
Yeah.
believe you met him.
Kawasaki H1 Triple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Take this down.
That guy's a douche.
What else? What else do we?
Well, we're talking about eBay for bikes.
Yeah, eBay, I mean, it kind of opens up a little bit more. You're going to be looking at more kind of decent running, more
Yeah.
put together bikes.
Less projects for sure.
Yeah, or kind of something that's already halfway there, and you want to change some things up, or
I think it's a good way to go if you're looking for a specific year
Yeah.
or model.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not as good if you're open to various
Yeah.
things, because a lot of the bikes are out of your area, so you
Mhm.
got to factor in,
Shipping.
shipping them or going to get
yeah,
them.
exactly.
But the quality is usually better, but they are generally selling for more too. It's not a great place to go get a killer deal on a bike.
Yeah, but also, I mean, at least in Southern California, where bikes are generally much more expensive than other areas, it could be if more like bike specific and year specific. I'd
It's
say
worth checking, and
It's
it gives
worth
you a
checking.
good idea on value too.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
You should always, when you find a local bike, go look it up on eBay and see what it sells for.
Mhm.
There's also a website called Terrapeak.com. You have to subscribe to it, but it's like $15 a month. I use it for my business a lot, but it lets you search back history of eBay. So you can look back up to 90 days of eBay history and see what something sold for.
Oh, that's
So
pretty
like
cool.
if you're looking at a particular model of bike or year, you can go look back through 90 days of sales of that particular bike and see what the average value was.
That's cool.
Which
Yeah.
gives you a good idea, what it's actually worth. That's
Yeah,
real
definitely.
world selling price. Where on Craigslist you don't know what they sold for.
Yeah, and also on Craigslist, even if they say firm, most of the time the price is
Yeah.
it has some
Craigslist
some
is never
room.
firm. You factor
Yeah.
in
I always factor in.
negotiating.
I throw in $500 more than I will take for it, assuming that
Yes.
someone is going to haggle me $500.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Always.
you always got to start.
Yeah.
You always start high.
Yeah.
So people posting that know that as well. So, I mean, Jared's approach usually is just cut whatever they have in half and offer him that.
Yeah.
Which seems to work. I don't know. I don't have luck with that.
But
Well,
do not
Yeah.
lowball until you've gone to see the
Yeah,
bike. The worst is
exactly.
when you're selling a bike and then you get emails and calls over the phone offering you half of what it's listed for without even looking
Yeah,
at it. At least
exactly.
don't be a douche. Go look at it and then negotiate with
Well, I
specific
tell people
things.
that too. Like, I if I'm interested in something, they say, "Well, what do you want to offer me?" It's like, well, I don't want to offer you anything until I see the bike.
Right,
I
right.
don't want to sit here and haggle with you over text
Right.
messaging.
Right.
Buying the bike I just bought in Folsom was a different story because I just kind of bought it sight unseen. I wasn't going to go up there and not buy it for the
Yeah.
price I wanted.
Right.
But if it's down the street, I'm going to go look at it before I throw a number
Yeah,
out there.
for sure.
And because you're more inclined, the person's more inclined to just talk to you and accept
Right.
your offer. It's,
Somebody's going to deal better after you go bullshit with them for half an
Yeah.
hour
Yeah,
as
exactly.
opposed to sending them a text message and saying, "Hey, will you take $2,000 less than you listed it for?"
Yeah.
That's generally when I just either don't answer or tell them to fuck off. 'cause
Yeah, exactly.
Then you're annoyed, And then I put down Cycle Trader. That's worth checking. I think that's usually a lot better conditioned bikes. It's usually
I didn't even know the cycle tray was still around.
yeah,
I
it's
just
good.
looked at it recently.
It's better for newer stuff, and they're generally in nice shape and well maintained, and they usually get top dollar. It's not a
I
great
assume
place
it's
to
more
deal.
like dealer stuff.
No, it's mainly dealers, but there's plenty of private party ads. But
Okay.
it is not a place to go get cheap stuff. Like
Yeah.
if you're willing to spend the cash, it's a place to get a nice restored bike. But
Mhm.
you're not going to go get a deal like you will on Craigslist.
Yeah.
But again, it will give you. It's a good way to get reasonable values for that bike in nice condition. So
Okay.
it's worth checking. And every now and then, I bought 2 or 3 bikes off Cycle Trader. It's always worth taking a look at.
Yeah.
You never know.
I always like if I'm looking for a bike, I'll look on there once. I usually don't see anything, but
Yeah, it's worth a shot.
definitely.
Well, the bigger net you put out, the more fish you're going to catch.
Yeah, exactly.
So the more bikes you have to choose from, the better.
Mhm.
And the more informed you are before you go try and negotiate, the better, too.
Yeah, exactly. And it does, I mean, doing your research, too, on the bikes, seeing if, like, what the most common issues are as well, and that
The
gives you an
known
idea, known problems, it gives you an idea what to check out.
Right.
Which probably should have been mentioned earlier. Some of the people probably fading off by now didn't catch that part.
So, might be.
But I think that's...
Yeah, I think
I
that's
think
some
that
good
covers a lot.
info. That probably wraps it up. But
Yeah. Should
I think
we-
that's good.
mention what we were talking about next week.
What are we talking about next week?
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Since just buy the bike, run it or rebuild it.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about
A little R&R.
planning
Yeah.
your build,
Yeah.
and what to do. So now you got
Exactly.
something, and let's figure out what the hell you're going to do with it.
Yeah. Cool. That's a wrap.
All right, well
Sweet.
then,
All right,
thanks for
thanks.
listening to Motorbike Mondays, and it'll be posted on our new website, and we will talk to you next week.
Yeah.
Later.
And feel free to... we're cutting this out.